Hello and welcome to your lesson for today. Please make sure you have the notes paper and at the top you have your LOT question. This might look familiar to you. Please pause the video and complete this question, and when you are ready to check your answer, please press play. All right, so let's take a look at the cookies here that Sarah and Josh are making. Sarah and Joshua make cookies for 4 hours. Sarah makes 7 cookies in 20 minutes. So right there, I'm going to stop and I'm going to think, okay, if Sarah makes 7 cookies in 20 minutes, how many is that in the 4 hours total that they are making cookies? So I know that Sarah's making 7 cookies in 20 minutes. And if I think about 20 minutes, there are 3 chunks of 20 minutes that make up 1 hour. So I'm going to multiply 7 times 3. And then after that, it also says that they are making them for 4 hours. So 7 times 3 gets me to how many cookies for 1 hour, but I need to know for 4 hours. So I'm also going to multiply by 4. And that gets me that Sarah is making a total of 84 cookies. This is Sarah, so I'm going to label it with an S. All right, coming back to my word problem. Sarah and Josh make cookies for 4 hours. Sarah makes 7 in 20 minutes, and Josh makes 1/3 less than Sarah. So in order to figure this out, I have to figure out what is 1/3 of Sarah's total, and then I have to subtract that in order to figure out how many cookies Josh is making, because it says 1/3 less. So I'm going to do 84 times 1/3. To figure out what that equals. 84 times 1/3 is the same as 84 divided by 3. And when I do that, I get 28. Now, Josh is not making only 28 cookies. He's making 28 less than Sarah. So I have to do 84 minus 28. And as I am subtracting that, I determine that Josh is making 56 cookies. So I've got 56 here and 84 here for Sarah. So what that tells me is altogether 84 plus 56, altogether 8. I have 140 cookies. I'm sorry, not I. Sarah and Josh have 140 cookies that they have made combined. Then it says they sell cookies at a price of 70 cents per cookie. So I'm going to take the 140 and times it by 0.7 to determine how much money they would be making. Excuse me. And that equals $98. Then it says that they have a 6% tax. So now I need to find what is 6% of $98, and to figure that out, I can do 98 times 0.06, or times 6 over 100. And when I multiply that, I get 588. And it does say plus tax, so I am going to add 98 plus 588 to give me a total of $103.88. Now again, this question may have looked familiar because it was on our assessment that we took last Friday. So I just wanted to make sure that we all understood the steps to get there. Multi-step problems are very popular, and so if you have questions about this, please make sure you ask the teacher. Today, our objective is that mathematicians can solve equations with variables on both sides. We want to make sure that we remember our equation knowledge and also take a look at what happens when we have variables on both sides, because as we get later in the week this week, there are going to be some special cases and some special things that happen when we have variables on both sides. So we're going to start with that today. Some things that we need to remember about equations. Equations and solving them is always a balancing act. So I have to be very careful of whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. I've also heard this referred to as the golden rule of algebra. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So keep that in mind as you are solving. Some steps and things that we need to think about. When we are solving an equation, the first thing that we should do is simplify the sides of the equation. Now notice when I'm simplifying one side of the equation, I am thinking about simplifying expressions rules, not equation rules. So be very careful not to mix those up. Okay? This looks like distributing and combining like terms. It might be one of those things or it might be both. Once I have simplified as much as possible, I want to use the inverse operations in order to isolate the variable. And so this is me undoing the equation, which means order of operations backwards. So since when I am simplifying, I do PEMDAS, when I am solving or undoing, I do the opposite, which is SADMAP. Okay, so again, make sure you are following along on your notes paper and completing the examples as we go here. Our first question. 40 plus 7x equals 6 times the sum of 1 plus 4x. So as I look at this, the first thing I know I need to do is simplify both sides. There's nothing to simplify on the left, but I can distribute on the right to simplify. So 40 plus 7x equals 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 4x is 24x. Now at this point, this is where I see students asking questions like, do I move the 7 or do I move the 24? Some of you may already know which one you would like to choose. Some of you may be thinking, I don't know which one I would choose. My recommendation is to always move the smaller, and here's why. If you move the 7, you end up subtracting 7x from both sides, and you end up with 24 minus 7, which is 17x. Haven't changed the 6 yet, so that remains. The 7x is over here canceled, so I'm left with 40. If you were to do the reverse, you would end up doing 7 minus 24, and you would be introducing yourself to negatives. Negatives are not a bad thing, but it just leaves more room for mistakes and losing those negative signs in our problems. So I would encourage you to try to keep it positive, but that is your choice. So as I have it here, 40 equals 6 plus 17x. In order to work on isolating the variable, I need to subtract 6 from both sides. And I end up with 34 equals 17x. As I take a look at this now, I know that this is multiplication, so I need to divide, and I end up with x equals 2. Let's take a look at another equation with variables on both sides. Nothing to simplify on the right side this time, but now on the left I can distribute. 3 times b is 3b. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. And in this case, I'm going to move the 3b to try to keep them positive. So I'm going to subtract 3b from both sides. Again, when I move across the equal sign, that is when I'm doing the inverse operations. These cancel, and I have negative 21 equals negative 5 plus 4b. I need to add 5 to cancel out the negative 5. On the left side, though, I have negative 21 plus 5. That is different signs, so I need to subtract and get negative 16 equals 4b. Divide by 4, and we get b equals negative 4 as the answer. Again, make sure you are following along and filling in your notes page along the way, please. When I take a look at number 3, I notice that in this problem I have parentheses on both sides, so it is going to require more simplifying. If I move anything across the equal sign line, that is when I do inverse operations, but not before. So on the left side I distribute a 4. 4 times negative 4r is negative 16r. 4 times positive 4 is plus 16. 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. And 3 times negative 8r is negative 24r. So in this case right now, both of my r's are negative. Doesn't matter which one I choose, but I am going to choose to move this one here in order to try to make it positive. These cancel, and I have negative 24 equals 16. And now again, because these are different signs, I subtract and end up with 8r. Then I minus 16 from both sides. 8r equals, these are both negative, so I add and end up with 40. And it is negative. And then I divide by 8 on both sides to get r equals negative 5. All right, so as I look at number 4, number 4 is very similar to what we have already seen. I do not see any distribution. I do see some combining like terms potential here, but I also see lots of fractions. So as I look at this, the first thing that I want to do is get rid of those fractions so I have less to work with here. So as I'm looking, I remember that in order to cancel my fractions, I need to multiply by the common denominator. So in this case, they are all the same, so I'm going to multiply everything by that denominator of 3, remembering to multiply each term in order to have an equivalent expression. When I multiply 3 times negative 11 over 3b, I end up with negative 11b because the 3's cancel. Then I have plus 1, but 1 times 3 is 3. Again, when I multiply here, the 3's cancel. And I end up with 5b. The 3's cancel once again, and I end up with negative 10b. And the 3's cancel once again, and I end up with plus 1. So now I've gotten rid of my fractions, so it looks quite a bit nicer to work with. Combining like terms. Nothing on the left that I can combine. However, on the right, 5 minus 10b gives me negative 5b. I'm going to add 11b to both sides. 3 equals 6b plus 1. Minus 1 from both sides, 2 equals 6b, and at this point, sorry, I have to move over here for my space, divide by 6, and I end up with b equals 2 over 6, which is the same as 1/3. Again, remember, it makes sense to end up with a fraction as my answer because I did have fractions to begin my problem. All right, let's take a look at one more problem. Excuse me. As I look here, again, I do see more fractions. However, this time I do not see the same denominator, so I'm going to have to think a little bit harder here. When I look at this 2, 4, and 8, I think that my common denominator would be 8, so I'm going to multiply every piece, every term of this problem by 8. So when I multiply 1/4 p times 8, simplify diagonally, and I end up with 2p. Multiplying by 8 here cancels, and I end up with plus 15. That simplifies, and I get 20p. And 8 times the 1 that's there is negative 8p. Combine like terms, 2p plus 15 doesn't change. 20 minus 8p is 12p. Minus 2p from both sides. 15 equals 10p. Divided by 10, and I get p equals 15 over 10, which is the same as 3 over 2, which is the same as 1 1/2. All right, so at this time, hopefully you feel a bit more comfortable with our objective here for today. Mathematicians can solve equations with variables on both sides. At this time, please show your completed notes page to the teacher to receive the homework assignment. As you work on the homework assignment, please make sure you are showing all of your work, and remember our process for submitting assignments on Canvas. If you do not remember how to do that, then please keep track of this paper, of your homework paper, and I will help you do that when we have some time.